I said before the year, I always felt like 2024 was a rebuild kind of year.
Yeah.
Just because of the way we've recruited. And honestly, at this point, I don't harp on recruiting as much with Michigan, especially if Harbaugh stays, because they've proven at this point that they don't need to recruit, bananas to get results. But at the same time, you're losing really the core of that run for the most part.
Yeah.
Even if JJ comes back, you're losing Corum. You're losing a lot of those defensive guys. You're losing a lot of that O-line. So to me, regardless, 2024 was always going to be a rebuild year to me. And Ryan Day has to win that game next year, man. Considering it's a rebuild year to me, and it's at home. Like, if he doesn't win that game, man, oh, man. I mean, what do you think? You agree with that? Like, that's got to be the most titanic result if he doesn't win that game.
Well, I think that a college football coach runs into a double-edged sword if the expectations are that high and they don't have the talent to get it done. Well, it's their fault because they acquire the players. But if they've got all the talent and they don't get it done, well, then they didn't prepare them and didn't scheme well enough. So, yeah, there are no excuses. There are never excuses, or should not be, at Ohio State. Yeah, they now this is not going to help them for this season, but they just got a commitment from the number one cornerback in the nation about 3 days ago, and they got what's expected to be a commitment from like the number 3 cornerback, and they're both out of Houston.
Oh yeah, I've been noticing that too. Your guys' secondary coach been killing it, man. He's been killing it on the recruiting trail. And have you guys slacked a little bit on the defensive side past couple of years? Yeah, but you guys always recruit. I mean, Alabama, Georgia level. That's never an issue. The issue the past couple of years has just been getting that talent to perform at that level that they're supposed to perform at, which they perform pretty close. But I just think next year is like that's a make or break year because to me, Michigan, I hope they're I hope they just it's a reload year, but I don't see it. I think there's too much replacement that has to go on for them to really reload, and I just don't see it. I think 2025 is more Michigan's year. 2026 if they're going to make a run. 2024 I got to see it, man. I don't know what the product's going to be. Unlike this year where I was like, oh, we winning it. I don't feel that way going into 2024, but I hope I'm wrong.
And I just got frustrated by people just kind of dismissing Michigan by saying, oh, this is the worst Alabama since 2007. I'm like, stop it.
Well, I said the same thing, but that doesn't take away from you understand that that's a valid argument. It's not an argument tearing down Michigan. It's just a honest evaluation of Alabama's teams. If you go year to, it's more of a credit to Bama and Saban to say this is crazy that this could be your worst team since 07 or 08, and they made the college football playoff.
So worse than last year, worse than 2010.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alabama has been so dominant that the worst team in 15 years beat a back-to-back defending national champion? Make it make sense, Mark.
No. Okay, I look at it this way. We know what happened against Auburn. We know how ugly that game was, that they lucked out. And they've had those games before, but just follow my line of thinking. So we know how bad that Auburn game was. We know how bad that Arkansas game was. We know how bad the South Florida game was, et cetera, et cetera. We also know, look at this quarterback. Well, look at the last 3 quarterbacks. Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. He doesn't come close to those 3 guys. So you're going all the way back to 2015 Jay Coker to start to make comparisons at quarterback. The recruiting we know has been insane, great, wide receiver, running back. But the guys just have not emerged. Like there's no, again, just go year to year to year through the Trent Richardsons, the Derrick Henrys, the TJ Yeldons, the Najee Harrises, the Jahmyr Gibbs. Every year. They didn't have that guy this year. Wide receiver, the same thing. Even the team that beat you, that missed the playoffs in 2019, that played in the Citrus Bowl, that was one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country,
Yeah.
even though they lost 2 games. And one of those losses was by 5 points to the Joe Burrow team.
Yeah.
And the other one was because Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes and they clanked a field goal off the upright and lost at Auburn 48-45. That team had Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris. Like they were like all the bad Alabama teams were just tripped up and still had ungodly talent that was better than this team. That's why I make that statement.
Well, I mean, now can we revisit this? If we go on, 3 or 4 years now, and all of a sudden, Jace McClellan's a 1,500-yard rusher in the NFL.
Yep.
And Jermaine Burton's,
absolutely, absolutely, we can revisit it, and also understand that while I'm dissing this Alabama team, I'm also stating that they're still one of the 5 best teams in the country.
Yeah, and keep in mind, for all the talk about Jalen Milroe, wasn't he like 6th in QBR this year? I know he's top 10.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just seems like all of a sudden we're discounting Bama instead of propping up Michigan, because all I'm hearing going into these 2 games was oh, Bama's going to beat you. Bama's the best team. Bama. Then all of a sudden, Michigan beats Bama, and this is the worst team they've had in 15 years. Then next week it was Penix. Oh, you've never seen offense like Penix is going to light you up for 400 yards. Joe Moore award winning. They could protect him. You guys can't. You can't tackle him. You can't pressure him. Can't touch him. He's going to torch you guys. And he goes out there and he looks terrible. I mean, they score 13 points, but now it's now all these other excuses and stuff like that, and it's never, wow, Michigan might have just been the best team in the country at number 1.
Fair. That's all fair. But as it applies to me in my analysis, at least give me this, Mike. For all the times that I'm wrong, and I'm wrong plenty of times, I'm at least consistent. So when Alabama looked awful against Texas, then awful against South Florida, I would love to, I may go back and watch the live stream of the night that they played South Florida. And everybody was like, oh, they're terrible. Look, it was 3-3 in the fourth quarter. Because I sat here and still said, calm down, everyone. Nick Saban will figure it out. They're going to stay with Jalen Milroe, and they're going to figure out a way to use what he does best. They'll eliminate the stuff that he can't do, and they will be in the SEC championship game. And I believe they'll still be in the national championship game. That's what I said. So at least I was consistent and didn't fly off the handle because they had a 3-3 game in the fourth quarter against South Florida. And similarly, even though I was still predicting Alabama to go as far or further than they did, I also was consistent saying all year, this is possibly the worst Alabama. Like, I can pull videos and live streams from September and October where I was saying this is probably the worst Alabama team since like 07, 08. So I was consistent at least.
Okay. But I mean,
in saying all that, Mike, I'm not taking away from Michigan's championship. Michigan is the best team in the country.
Well, I mean, not so much you, but to hear some of the people, they think, we just got lucky or something. Because I mean, this is the same, same Washington team that scored 13 and scored 37 against Texas, who, by the way, Texas isn't a bad defense. I mean, I think Devontae Sweat might be the best defensive player in college football.
Yeah. When you and I say Texas is bad on defense, that's like me saying Alabama's got a bad team this year. That's against all their talent. It's a very talented defense. They're just didn't put the pieces together and didn't develop and mature the way that they should. But Texas is loaded with defensive talent. It's like when Ohio State has a bad defense. You're like, well, why? They should be better.
Yeah, and for a bad Ohio State defense is like 30th.
Yeah.
They're not like 80th, 90th or anything like that. No. And it just frustrates me because I'm seeing all the blowback from these people. It's like, you know what? I mean, when Ohio State won, I gave them credit. They won national championship. I mean, especially doing it, with a third string quarterback. Props to them. They beat the stuffing out of Wisconsin to get in there, made the run. Congratulations, you won. Not a fan of Ohio State, but at least I can recognize it. I didn't make bull crap excuses.
Yes, you are completely right. People may not like it that Michigan won or whatever, but nobody should say anything. There is no way to detract from this championship. There just should be no way for anyone to poke holes in it or anything.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Charlie coming out and saying this is a fair and square win. That should silence all the critics. I know it won't, but it is.
I'll even say this, Mike. I'll even say this, and you're right about that. And I may look through that and knock out a video or something because that's substantial. That's really important. I'll even say this, that what I said after the Ohio State-Michigan game. And again, I wanted to be understood that Michigan won the game fair and square. They were the better team on the field. They're the champion. They should advance. All of that. I'm not saying that refs did nothing like that. But I still came away with that, as you well know. If you remember, it said, I still kind of think Ohio State's a little bit better than Michigan.
Of course you did.
Well, I'm just being honest because that's what I said. Because I was trying to take my bias out of it, but I will say with each game you can reevaluate, and I will say after watching Michigan play these two games against Alabama and Washington, they're better than Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's better on offense than us.
I don't know about that.
I don't think it's by a great margin.
I think Michigan's better on both sides of the ball by not much, because I think Ohio State is an excellent defense.
I will say this: I all the picking I did on Jim Knowles last season, I have to walk a little bit back because I was on record.
Rightfully so. You picked on him. So did I.
I mean, I thought that hiring a nickel DC out of the Big 12 was going to be a massive mistake for an Ohio State.
But at least understand this, Mike. Similar to what did I believe you did, and other Michigan fans say after the TCU game?
Better team didn't win.
Yeah. So why can't I have that right after a one-score McCord makes 2 long completions, you're down to the 35-yard line, and if you score, you win 31-30. Why can't I say on the road, why can't I make that claim when my team's 11-0 taking on an 11-0 Michigan team that I still think my team's a little bit better?
Okay, I tell you what. If we had lost to Alabama, I probably wouldn't push back so hard on that.
No, I was saying that after the game and before you played Alabama.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I thought Michigan was a better team after that. But yeah, I mean, I can understand why some Ohio State guys would say, yeah, we're the better team. Because, I mean, a lot of the big names were on Ohio State. I mean, everybody was just Marvin Harrison is just the greatest wide receiver in the history of the game. Best wide receiver core in the country. This was back when Washington was kind of a little under the radar. Their defense had improved, from the previous year. I mean, I would have disagreed with you, but I wouldn't have said, this, it's not a discussion.
Oh, no, that was going to be my next point. If you remember, Mike, I said clearly, I'm not stating this as some kind of fact or that this is not debatable. I'm saying that the Michigan person has all the evidence on their side. They just won the game fair and square. I'm the one who's got the uphill argument, but I still believe that you can make an argument that Ohio State's a little bit better, but I'm not by any means saying I'm right and there's no way to debate it or anything like that. No.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you on that one then.
I'll say it this way. Now that we've seen everybody play all these games, I still would love to see Georgia and Michigan play, but that's what it is.
Well, I mean, can we go transitive property here, though? I mean, this, Alabama, they beat them worse than the score indicates.
Yes, you're right. They did.
I mean, they were thoroughly beaten. It might have been a 3-point win.
They controlled the game. Yep.
And then Michigan beat Alabama. Now it was a touchdown in overtime, and Alabama did have some big mistakes. But, I tend to go the transitive property here. Same way with, if like Texas fans wanted to argue that, we could beat Michigan too. I'd go transit property on them too. You know, with Washington being B instead of Alabama. I mean, that's why
I'm not a
I
big
really
transitive property guy. I'm more of a resume guy. If you can give me like 7 of those, then I'm like, okay, I get it. But just one little connect the dots.
But honestly, I mean, Georgia, the only really impressive win I would say was Ole Miss.
Sure.
I mean,
No,
they beat a Missouri team by 1 score that I thought was a little bit overrated. Now, I don't think quite so much after what they did to Ohio State in the bowl game, but I think Missouri was kind of a little on the hype side. Now, blowing out Ole Miss was definitely impressive.
Yeah,
But
understand what I'm saying about the Georgia thing. I'm not saying that because, oh, Georgia would prove that they're better. No, I'm just saying if there's another game I would like to see and would like to have seen played this year, that would be the game.
I'd like to see it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm confident enough in this Michigan team that I would like to see them go up against any team you want to put on there. You know, whether it be in Alabama, Texas, Washington, Georgia. That's pretty much it. I don't think any other teams can really have a conversation about it.
I'll put it this way. This is who I believe are the best teams in the country this year. I think Michigan is number 1. I think Georgia is number 2. And I think I would have to sit here for a long time and figure out Alabama, Washington, Texas, Ohio State. Who'd I miss? Maybe Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
That I just think they're all so incredibly close. Who knows?
Well, I mean, and this was kind of a bad year for it because, you know, this year, if you didn't win your conference championship, you had no chance because every conference championship was either undefeated or had 1 loss. And the fact that there were 3 conference champions that were undefeated, that just kind of muddied the water. Whereas last year, you know, you had a Pac-12 championship that had 2 losses, so you could keep them out. And that's the reason why Ohio State snuck in, because even at 11-1, they were still good enough, at least record wise and eye test wise, to sneak into the 4th spot.
Yeah, it's almost crazy when you consider Ohio State, I think, was a better team this year than they were last year. And they certainly had better credentials because they went on the road and beat Notre Dame instead of beating them at home. And Notre Dame was a little bit better this year than they were the year before. And instead of getting blown out against Michigan, they played it down to the wire. And they're both 11-1 teams, but the team that had worse credentials got into the playoffs just because it's a different scenario.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have conferences that just really fell off, like
Yep.
the Pac-12 and the Big 12 last year.